He is back home in the SIP. Fellas, what's going on? How you guys feeling?
Feeling great, Charlie Carr.
Good. Coach Carl Reed, what's
Feeling
up, brother?
good. Feeling good. Ready to get into the show today.
All right, Coach Reed, let's start with you, man, because this thing on Friday night was very troubling to me because I fell asleep a happy camper. I fell asleep unexpectedly. A lot of people on the East Coast probably did. And Carl, I'm looking at a 29-0 game as now I lay me down to sleep. And I wake up to a nightmare at 2:30 in the morning when I check my phone and see that Colorado lost in double overtime. Carl, what in the hell went wrong in the second half?
Stanford went to halftime and made some great adjustments. And when they made the adjustments, Colorado didn't make the adjustments back. They attacked them with short routes and slants, and they hit them with a lot of slants. Offensively, Colorado couldn't get it going in the second half. Some uncharacteristic interceptions from Deion Sanders. And this was really a heartbreaking loss for Colorado.
Yeah, well said, Coach Reed. It was a game of adjustments. Coach Prime demanded from the guys that we had to start fast this week. This week being the game against that opponent. You go into halftime 29-0. So you score on the first possession, which hadn't happened since the TCU game. You hold their offense to 0 points. They did have a field goal attempt that they just missed on their own. But 29-0 at halftime, you couldn't ask for a better start as far as starting fast and being dominant.
And Coach, I mean, in the first half, I'd said this to Neely earlier in the week on the Rewind. Deion Sanders was standing so tall in the pocket. The offensive line was just knocking Stanford all over the field. They had all day. I was like, man, what team is this? Where has this been? Where has this offensive line been? I did wake up a couple of times in the second half, and I swear, right when I woke up, Shedeur was like getting sacked, and I was like, well, how do you make adjustments where the offensive line can be so dominant and you either scheme something or does the effort and focus change that you can see such a drastic change within the same game?
Stanford came out in the beginning of the game a little timid in the passing game. They were rushing 3 or 4 and dropping 7 or 8 every time, especially with Travis Hunter being back, trying to make sure that you got extra guys in his way. They came out in the second half and they rushed 5 or 6 every play. And they started to play a lot of man on the perimeter and bringing extra guys that having one more rusher than Colorado had blocker. And then they started winning a couple of one-on-one matchups. So then it was pressure coming from everywhere in the second half on Shedeur.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on our side of the ball, the Colorado side of the ball, I think depth became an issue and fatigue became an issue. You have an offensive line, man, that it is what it is. There have been games where they've just, allowed 2 sacks and games where they allowed 8. They really dug deep against Stanford and did their thing in the first half. But as Carl Reed has said, when Stanford tried to send more at them and fatigue gets in and a lack of depth steps in, you get what you got. Hats off to him, man. What a hell of an adjustment. I would love to hear whatever that halftime speech was in the visiting locker room and see if we can bottle it and sell it. Because anytime you can come back from 29-0 to even let alone be in the game, forcing overtime, going to double overtime and win, that was some nice adjustment on their parts, man. Hats off to them.
Coach, can you build on some of the things that you saw in the first half from that offensive line? Again, I mean, I was looking at Shedeur in that offense. Travis Hunter looked like he was on a video game, and I was like, this is that team that we were so excited about before Travis got hurt. You're talking about Heisman, hopefuls with multiple players. And I mean, I was like, look, that's an NFL draft pick leading that offense. Clearly, not that I never thought that he wasn't, but it just looked so good. Even though you lost that, can you go back to what happened in the first half and say, look, those are the things we need to build on?
Well, you definitely can look at some of those things, but I think even what's more important, what you have to do moving forward, is you really have to do a mental assessment of yourself as a player. Games like that, games that you're supposed to win, games that you're up 29-0 and you end up losing because you get outscored in the second half 46-14, those have the tendency to derail seasons and break men. So what men have to do if they're going to play this game is understand that football is one of the hardest sports, if not the hardest sport in the world. And you have to really check yourself on your preparation. You have to check yourself on your attention to detail, on your toughness, and really on what you want to do for the rest of the season. And you can't let the season collapse if you're really a football player, because it is a devastating loss. And so it's going to be more about your mental aptitude and how your character is moving forward, because football doesn't build character, it reveals it. So it's times like this when you'll find out who you really are.
Well said, Coach Carl Reed. This is one of those games that you will forever be a part of, whether you're the coaching staff, support staff, let alone the players that are involved. You think about the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Oilers. You think about the Patriots and Atlanta Falcons. You have some historic games out there that people talk about for decades and decades after, because it was so insurmountable that a team would be able to come back. But here they did, 29-0 against a team that you were supposed to beat. And that's one of the concerns about this current roster is they play up to their opponent or down to their opponent. Keep in mind, one of the other teams that you were supposed to beat was Colorado State, and it went into double overtime. You got the win, but it went into double overtime. And I've said time and time again on the Big Boys, the rewind of the pregame show, things have to happen for you to win a championship or to be a contender. And those things are, you have to beat the people you're supposed to beat, and you have to beat somebody you're not supposed to beat. We started off the season, with TCU, not favored, 21-point dogs, and won that game. The next game, Nebraska could have gone either way, won that one. And then you get Colorado State, which was you're supposed to blow them out, and you didn't. And you see what happens with the rest of the schedule after that. The interesting thing at this point, sitting on 4 wins, the Stanford would have got you to 5. Now you only would have needed 1 out of the back end of the season to become bowl eligible. Now you need 2, Carl Reed. So what you got to do now is you can't just beat one person you're not supposed to beat. You got to beat 2 people that you're not supposed to beat if you're going to close out November with 6 wins in the books.
This is the Big Boys right here on the Pregame Show Network. Neely, I'm just going to start calling it the Pregame Show Network. Are you all right with that? It's been the Pregame Show YouTube channel, but brother, you are building a network here. So let's
hey man, I have said that's the plan all along, is to become a network. So a network built around the Pregame Show. Look at it like Sports Center. Once upon a time, all you had on ESPN was Sports Center, that one particular show, and it just ran all day long with highlights. Now you got various shows all day long on ESPN. So same thing, man. The model is out there. We're going to keep bringing you hot topics, new shows. So it is indeed a network, Ollie Carr.
Well, I say that to say that here in the Atlanta studios, I'm in a little different spot. I'm in the control room here at HBCU Game Day. We're doing a pilot show in the normal location, so I had to get crammed into the control room. So things might look a little wonky. My earpiece isn't long enough, and it's coming across my shoulder. I hate that, but it is what it is. Look, just outside of the shot, I got a drill right here. Like there's all sorts of things happening.
Go to work.
All right, let's get back to the conversation. I'm old enough to remember, in a lot of detail, the Fab Five when they were in Michigan, and we talked about the cultural kind of comp of what Colorado is doing and what that team did back in the day. And we made other comps. We talked about USC and Georgetown. One thing that always irked me about the Fab Five back in the day, I still remember it, they played up and down to their competition. They're right there with UNC. Even though they lost to the Tar Heels in that national championship game, they had beat them earlier in the year, back in the old Big Ten ACC Challenge. And then they would lose the teams, I don't know, I'm going to make up somebody like Fresno State or somebody. You'd be like, what happened there? So Neely, that, Carl, that is a thing. You guys being former, players, coaches, what is it about sports psychology that kind of allows you to, why is it that the great ones can always be consistent with their effort no matter who they line up against?
Well, that's why it's only so few great people also. When you think about the great ones and the consistency that they have and the attention to detail, the willingness to prepare no matter who your opponent is. That I read a quote the other day where Somebody asked Michael Jordan, why was he playing so hard in the exhibition game? And he says, because I don't want anybody to ever think they could beat me or they should be on the court with me. That's a special type of mentality that you have to have. A lot of times players and coaches are conditioned to, when we have an easier game, to take your foot off the gas a little bit, and you think that it's going to be easy. And when the water starts to swell, it's hard to turn it off. Once the faucet is on and the leaking starts, it's hard once it starts to fall off a little bit. So it's more of mental conditioning, having the ability to follow the process every single day, to treat Monday the way you're supposed to treat Monday, to treat Tuesday the way you're supposed to treat Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every day leading up to the game, following the details of class, of film, of treatment, of extra studying, of doing all your work. And some guys, it's easy to get up for some of the bigger games, but when you have a game that you feel like you should win with no problem, everybody always doesn't handle those the right way.
Absolutely. And there's a gumbo, if you will, of ingredients that we can throw into that pot, Coach Reed. I'll start with this one, and that's young youth. This team is still young. You have some individuals on the team that have experience, but playing together as a group, this is their first time doing it. You know, you look at Dylan Edwards, a true freshman, Starter Cartermeyer, true freshman, Kermani McLean, true freshman. Even with Shedeur and Travis's experience, this is their first experience at this level. Then you take really experienced guys like a graduate student in Shane Coates, who came from Dartmouth. This is his first experience at this level. And people have to learn, it has to be in them to some degree already and coached into them, that you do not play the scoreboard. You play perfection. You play the standard. You play what you worked on in practice, and you don't let up just because you're up on the scoreboard, because it's not about the other team. It's about yourself and what you're trying to accomplish. Coach Prime has preached and poured that into him. On defense, Charles Kelly says it all the time. At halftime, don't play the scoreboard. Play the scheme. Play what you're supposed to be. Play your role in the 111. And the team just failed to do that because complacency set in. And I tell you this, Carl, being there on that sideline, being at Folsom Field in that stadium, momentum is indeed a real thing. When they came out and were unable to score, and then you had Stanford get a score, and then the wheels start to wobble, they get another score, and then mathematically they're in the game, and you have some crucial penalties that gave them extended drives, such as the unsportsmanlike conduct on Travis Hunter, who's involved in exchange with one of the players after a play that continued to drive that led to a score. You just got the sense, which was counter to the other times when you just knew Colorado was going to win. You started to get the sense like, oh, man, we're in trouble. If they tie this thing up and go to overtime, who knows? When the previous games, you just knew if you give Shedeur Sanders time, he's going to get it done and do what he does. But this was one of those rare occasions, man, that I think is going to be a lesson learned for this team. I think it's going to be a growing point for this team. You look what happened after Colorado State. The team was able to grow from it. I think these coaches are going to make sure that this team grows from it. And one of the key things happened that night is Coach Prime, as he walked off the stage, he announced, oh, yeah, we're practicing tomorrow. Forget a bye week. We're going to fix this now, because if we know what we see at practice is what we're going to see in games. So we got to fix this in practice. And I think this team is going to embrace that.
Coach Prime has made it a very popular thing, the phrase "we coming," as soon as he got to Colorado. In the postgame press conference, the ills that were displayed on the field in the come from behind loss by Colorado, he said he saw that coming. He said he saw it coming, and it aggravated him. And sometimes you got to just let it lay all out for everyone to see what you were talking about. Either Neely or Carl here, in whatever order we want to set it up. What were some of those things that he saw, and what are some of those things that you can see and look for that the general, Joe Blow like me can't see, but you can see, these type of performances or letdown kind of lurking beneath the surface?
Well, I'll take it from attending practice on an almost daily basis. You see guys not finishing. You see people not getting to the ball because they happen to be on one hash mark and the ball is at the other. You don't see a drive and determination to be the best that you can be. You see a drive and determination to just get through practice, so we can go to the cafeteria. And eventually that kind of thing is going to show up in the game. When you're missing assignments at practice, when you're taking oh man, we got this is a weaker opponent attitude in practice, you're going to see it in the game. And what Coach Prime knows in his experience, whether it was high school in North Myers or at Florida State or the teams in the NFL, is that when you have that permeate in your locker room, eventually it's going to catch up with you in a real game. He preaches all the time. The only way you're going to see it in the game is you see it in practice, and that includes the negative things.
If it's one thing, guys, that every coach knows, it's what their team really is. You know the way that they prepare. You know the way that they look on tape. You know what your deficiencies are. So as a coach, when he says he saw that coming, he can see it coming because he knows what his team is. He knows what his strengths are. He knows what his weaknesses are. And players typically in a situation are unwilling to change until something catastrophic happens. You can lose against USC and Oregon, and you can just throw that away to, okay, those are better teams than us. We're not quite there yet. But a Stanford loss will wake you up in a way that nothing else will. And I've always known this about the game of football. You are whatever your tape says you are. You are how you practice. You're going to practice the way you play. But if there's a winner inside of you anywhere, nothing will bring it out the way that losing will.
Well, guys, I don't know football as good as you do, but I know grass pretty good. And I have a beautiful zoysia front yard. Now, my backyard's a complete mess. But I know if I see some crabgrass or some other forms of grass that ain't zoysia, if I don't pluck it or treat it, and I come back a couple of weeks later, guess what? There's going to be more of that. So you've got to identify those things and you've got to get it out. Or else, what did they say, Carl? You're either coaching it or you're allowing it. And I think Coach Sanders has done a good job of identifying it. Of course, he handles things privately, but publicly, he's kind of let us know about those things. One last thing about his press conference that he said he loves the game of football so much and he just wants people to match his passion. Now, he didn't say this, but I read between the lines. Look, he doesn't expect people to be as fast and as talented as he was. You know, you just don't have Deion Sanders just, pluck them off trees. But your love and passion, that is something, and you can just give the best of the gifts that you do have. But he went on to say that, at the end, it was kind of ironic that he said it was kind of ironic that the game doesn't even have the capability to love you back, but you put so much into it anyway. Carl, I never thought of it that way, but I thought that was a real profound way to frame it. Is like, look, you're going to give it all and you're not going to get it back outside of the fulfillment that you did give it all.
You don't get it back emotionally. Like, it doesn't love you back and hug you back, but it gives you an education. It gives you the opportunity to play in the National Football League. It gives you an opportunity to buy your mother a house and change the way that your family lives. It gives you the opportunity to do a lot of things that whatever you put in the game is what you're going to get out of the game. And he put a lot into it. What happens when you're coaching guys and when you're coaching players is, as every level rises, as the commitment to being great increases, you'll have certain guys that'll tap out at every level. There's an old saying that says, the cowards never attempted, the weak died along the way, and only the strong survive. This is truly a game that's going to take you through those different levels to see if you're really committed to it.
Tolly, Coach Carl Reed, one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Frederick Douglass during his abolitionist days. And he said, in life, you may not get what you pay for, but you will always pay for what you get. And what you take from that is, guys, you're going to have to do the work. And just because you do the work does not mean you're getting drafted in the NFL, going to become a Hall of Famer, going to be in the Pro Bowls, all those kind of things. But the only way to do it is to do the work. And what Coach Prime is looking for is for guys with that kind of passion. As he put it, I need guys who love it, not just like it. Because here's the deal, man. It's cool to play for Deion Sanders. It's cool to be in Colorado and get all this attention. It's so cool, in fact, that you can just convince yourself, well, that's all I need from this. I just want to be a part of it. I just want to be in the glow and the sunlight and the bask of it. I'm not really trying to, do all these other things that the coaches are pushing. Well, those guys are going to be pushed out. It is what it is. And so when Coach Prime says I'm about 7 or 8 players away from competing consistently in that top 6, top 4 in the nation, he knows it's not just skill set or offensive lineman or defensive lineman. It's a mentality thing. Because like what you're saying, Tolly, if 8 of those wrong kind of grasses can take over your lawn, 8 of them can take over the other way too. So he's trying to get the right character, the right mindset, the right ability, the right positions into this program. For now, it is what it is. We knew that this was going to be a season with challenges. I don't think any expert out there thought that Colorado football would go undefeated. But again, you do have to beat the people you're supposed to beat, or you make your road to hoe that much tougher. And we're coming up on a part of the season after this bye week that, man, playing some ranked teams. We're playing some teams that have been there, done that, and we got to be ready for those teams, or else it's going to be a dreadful November for the Colorado Buffaloes.
Well, it is a bye week. Neely, why don't you grab a hoe, grab a rake? Come on, help me out with some yard work, brother.
No, bye week means off. I'll tell you like I had to tell my mama sometimes, God bless her. Just because I have nothing to do doesn't mean I want to fill it with something. This is a scheduled nothing.
Just checking. Carl, some of the things that we, people question and wanted answers to, and you do such a great job of giving us context. Personnel, getting people on the field, off the field, giving yourself enough time to run the play, not drawing a delay a game, not having confusion. We saw some of those issues there in that game. What causes a breakdown? I would imagine there's a myriad of ways that can happen.
Communication, getting signals in time enough, processing the signals. There's a lot of things that could go into getting a delay a game call or getting a penalty like that. And so you just got to go back to the drawing board on making sure that everybody is dialed in from a communication standpoint.
Carl, let me throw a log on that fire, man, because you talked about with communication. I think in the situation where we had so many penalties, probably about 5, if not 6 of them, with too many men on the field, that kind of thing, it not only gets down to communication, which is clearly what it's about, but it's also about trust. And I'm putting that more so on the coaches. Schematically, you have a situation where you have a defense dialed up and it's for a particular yardage. When it's 3rd and 3, we want to go to this. Sometimes you have a defense drawn up that where, okay, when they have this guy in the game, no matter what the yardage, we want to run this particular defense. But at the end of the day, Tolly and Carl, what you also got to do is just trust the 11 guys you got out there. Sometimes when the offense is running tempo and the ref is slow or fast at spotting the ball and people are coming on and off the field, you may not have time to get your best defense for that situation on the field. You got to trust the 11 that you got out there and just let the chips fall where they may, or you end up burning timeouts or getting penalties. So I think it comes down to what Carl was saying, to communication, but also trust. You got to get these players in a position where you can trust that 11 out there can handle the 11 that's out there and not try to keep swapping guys in and out at the risk of penalties or burning timeouts.
We saw the return of Travis Hunter in this game. He played both ways. Offensively, we saw him score touchdowns. We saw the video game moves, the spin, breaking ankles. He looked like vintage Travis Hunter out there. Defensively, we saw a little bit of everything. We did see him, get beat a couple times as well. How would you guys rate the return and the impact of Travis Hunter as a two-way player back in the lineup?
I'll go with that one. I'm not going to give it on a scale of 1 to 10, but I will say that thankfully Travis Hunter, when he's not 100%, is still much better than the rest of the college football players in the nation. But what's clear to me is that Travis Hunter was not 100% as it relates to game conditioning, as it relates to his wind and being in game shape and game speed to play both ways so much. Heart of a champion man, wanted to be out there and did everything he could. But you saw some lapses and some fatigue out there, whether it's in coverage or tackling, that just let you know, well, Travis wasn't fully all the way back. He may be cleared and fully healed with the lacerated liver, but when it came to conditioning, he was not fully back at it. And that was one of the concerns that Coach Prime had going into the game, was like, hey, it's going to be a game time decision. He's practicing. I feel strongly that he's going to play, and we'll see how much he's utilized, because I was concerned about his wind. And you saw not W-I-N wind, but W-I-N-D, his wind. And you could see some moments out there where Travis looked human.
I think that obviously him being the number one option on offense, and he did that well. I think the assignment that he drew guarding the number one receiver from the other team defensively, I think that forces your win and your conditioning to really come into play. I would have liked to see him maybe play some nickel, maybe give him some rest defensively, maybe double number one and put Travis on the number two guy, which might have been a better matchup for him, because he is being asked to do a lot on both sides.
And you, man, call spot on it. Because he's being asked to do a lot, and because he has answered that call so many times, he's still being asked to do a lot. And sometimes that's being on the coaches. Coach Prime, he totally owned this loss. He said, put it all on me. But you got to look at the coordinators on offense and defense, and even the position coaches, whether it's the receivers coach, Brett Bartolone, or the secondary coach and Coach Kevin Mathis, that sometimes you have to say, you know what, we got to make this adjustment to protect this guy from himself, or protect this player, this scheme. And one thing that showed once again, Carl, a night game, double overtime, we cannot defend the slant, man. Colorado State did the same thing and caused the game to go into overtime, and we were able to win it. And then after halftime, you look at their receiver, number 13, I think he was, almost 300 yards after halftime. The quarterback went from 30 yards passing in the first half to nearly 400 yards before the game was over, and that went to one player running the same route.
Yeah.
All right, look, the little bit of black hair I got, I'm pulling that out. What is it, Carl? Every week I ask you about this slant, and it's this guy's not in position, that guy. Is it the same thing every week, or is it different things happening?
It all depends on how you want to play it. If the corner's playing outside leverage and he runs a slant, and the guy runs a slant, you hoping that safeties and linebackers can feel and rally and tackle to the ball. If you go inside leverage, then you want to push the receiver to the sideline and take the slant away. And so it's all about whether you want to defend it underneath by bringing linebackers and safeties into the play, or whether you want to put the corner on the inside leverage. And it's really just a choice on how you want to stop the run in addition to stopping the slant. I would have liked to see them try it multiple ways, though.
And in addition to that, Carl, because you drew that perfectly, I wish we had the whiteboard up so I could draw it while you were talking, because you described it perfectly. We had moved Trevor Woods, who plays safety, down to linebacker to help some. But one thing about it, Tolly, no matter which way you try to stop this slant, whether it's going out or in, when you make contact with the catcher, the receiver, you've got to make the tackle. And so there's still an issue of yards after catch that Colorado is going to have to fix going forward, because it's one thing to deny the person running the slant the ball to make the quarterback uncomfortable throwing it. It's another thing for geometry. He has the advantage cutting across that should he get the ball, somebody has to be there to not just touch the guy. This ain't flag football, but to bring him down.
Yeah, yakety yak, don't come back. That's what we think of the yak. We want to get rid of the yak. All right, it is a bye week. There will be some rest. There will be some consternation after that loss to Stanford. What are bye week goals, guys?
Number one, your bye week goal has to be to get healthy across the board. All of the knick-knack injuries and getting banged up. The second thing with bye week has to be to take a mental check, right? You can't just take the whole week off, though, and everybody goes and chills. You got to stay in game shape. You got to start getting in on your next opponent, and you need to take advantage because you have 2 weeks to prepare for your next opponent instead of one.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I'm going to start with the end and work backwards, Carl. It's all about UCLA. You got to be in that film room. You got to be on that huddle account. You got to be doing everything you can, coaches and players, to get ready for the next opponent. There's plenty of film out there on UCLA. While you had an off week, they're playing. You can watch the game live, and take your own notes and that kind of thing. But first and foremost, what Coach Reed started, it is a time to rest and get healthy. You need to be at the facility and be in treatment with the trainers. getting stretched, getting poked, getting pulled, getting whatever you need to do to get your body back to where it was before we even got on the plane to go to TCU. That's what this week is for, is getting ready for this back half of the season. Now, here's the advantage. Our bye week, fell kind of perfectly, fell in the middle of the season. It's almost like spring break in a spring semester. The challenge, though, is our opponents are getting tougher in the back half of the season. So you got to rest up, man. You got to heal up, and you got to study up and prepare, because you better believe everybody that we play next, UCLA, Oregon State, Arizona, going to Washington, going to Utah, you better believe they watched that game or they studied that film and they see what they saw, which is what we saw, and they're going to try to throw some of the same things at us, because when you look at the game against Stanford and you look at Colorado State, no matter how you try to argue it one way or the other, it worked.
Well, Neely, Carl, in the comments each week, people have so much to say. It's just a barrel of laughs often. And sometimes, we get some coaching in the comments. People have their suggestions of how to fix things. Neely, I'm going to offer my suggestion. Earlier in the show, you said you noticed that, some players are just kind of going through the motions so they can get to the cafeteria. With all that lobster mac and cheese, I say, Neely, if we start to substitute some fried bologna sandwiches with the 4 slits and let them watch you sit over in the corner and eat all the lobster mac and cheese, that might handle that motivation to just slide through to get to that good food, man.
Hey, it worked back in the day in the SWAC, man, under W.C. Gordon. You had to earn your meals.
That's all I have. That's my suggestion. Maybe little less lobster mac and cheese, man. You got to be hungry out there, man. You got to be hungry.
Gotta want it. Can't just like it. Gotta love it.
Absolutely. Well, guys, Carl, what are you doing on your off week? It's off week for Colorado, but not for you, man. You're covering the whole sport. What are you looking forward to this weekend?
I got shows to do every day. It's not an off week for me. I work for 24/7 Sports. We never take a day off.
Literally, that's why they came up with the name 24/7. Carl, where can people catch up with you, man, on social and keep up with everything that you're doing while the Buffs are off?
You can follow me on every social media platform at Coach Reed Live. That's Twitter, that's Instagram, that's TikTok, YouTube. Everything is Coach Reed Live.
Man, these young people here at Game Day have me doing TikToks, Neely. It's it's a thing, man. I'm waiting for Alexis, your daughter, that bosses us around digitally, to force me on the TikTok train for the pregame show as well.
It's coming.
It's a bye week, Alexis. This might be a good week to throw it out there. Well, guys, thank you so much. Carl, don't work too hard. Buff fans, it is a bye week coming back with UCLA, but the content does not stop. The pregame show is everywhere. Wherever you are online, the keyword is the pregame show. For Coach Carl Reed, for Uncle Neely, I'm Tolly Carr, all over the place here in Atlanta, and we will see you guys later on the next episode of The Big Boys.